Woe to you, Pharisees! Woe to you, scribes! Woe to you, scholars of the law! It would seem that today Jesus is a little disturbed. I would say perhaps a little hurt. More on that in a moment. A couple of weeks ago, I was invited to give an evening of prayer at a wonderful parish, St. Teresa in Sherburne, in conjunction with the parish that's also next door in Dover. But as I was getting ready to drive to St. Teresa's in Sherburne, I couldn't help but remember back a few years in the past. When I was full-time in the Office of Spiritual Development, I used to help out at St. Teresa's in Sherburne every weekend. My friend was the pastor there, and he would ask me to do one of the masses. And I always did. And I got to know the community very well. A wonderful parish, wonderful people. The welcome was truly unbelievable. I enjoyed going out to Sherburne. There was only one problem way back when. Even though it's only 10 or 12 miles from Boston, it's not very easy to get to, especially if you're like me and have no sense of direction. It just seemed to me that it was one long, windy road out to the middle of nowhere. Cow pastures. Very beautiful to look at, very pastoral, very serene, but way, way out there. And I was always afraid of getting lost. So it was always difficult for me to get to St. Teresa's. I loved going, but it was tough to get to. Fast forward 15 years, I was invited to go back just a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, to give an evening of prayer for the confirmation families. However, fast forward 15 years, we live in the world of GPS. All I had to do was pick up my phone, put in the address, leave it on the seat, and my little friend Siri got me to St. Teresa's Toot Suite. No problem at all. But I learned something. It's not difficult to get to. It's almost a straight shot from where I lived then and where I live now in Newton. Literally, it is something like Route 16 to Route 27, there's the church. It wasn't difficult. Why did I think it was so difficult? And yet I did. That phone, that GPS device, that voice guiding me gave me confidence. It gave me extreme confidence, and I got there without a problem. The voice gave me confidence. Yesterday at Mass, Jesus began this woe to you to the scribes, the Pharisees, and the scholars of the law. He was invited to a very swanky dinner party, and all of these people were there. And he looked at them, he listened to them, he was aware of how they lived their daily lives. And today we see how disturbed, perhaps hurt, that he was. These were teachers of the law. These were men who were supposed to be guided by God every single day, but they slipped away. It was yesterday, I believe, that, he compares them to a cup that is clean on the outside, looks great, but on the inside, it's filled with darkness and plunder. Darkness and plunder. What happened to them? What happened to these good people? Well, I believe that what happened was they began to care more about themselves than the people around them. Jesus very explicitly reminds us today that, they worried more about where they were going to sit so they could be seen. They made rules and regulations that were difficult for people to carry out. They forgot. They forgot that God was always there. They lived their lives taking care of themselves. They didn't live their lives allowing God to take care of them. They were supposed to be filled with the confidence that fills the life of a faith-filled person. But they forgot that God was always there. My friends, my journey out to Sherburne was no different than it was 15 years ago, and yet that voice filled me with confidence. We have within us the voice of God. We have within us the light and the power and the strength that is God's life within us. Life that's deepened whenever we hear His word, deepened whenever we receive the Eucharist. A couple of weeks ago, we heard the disciples ask Jesus if they could have a little more faith, a little more faith. I need a little bit more. And Jesus infers that they don't. They need to take care of the faith they have so that they don't forget that God is always there to guide them. You and I need to remember that. We need to remember that God is always there. He is always by our side, giving us in the moment the presence and the grace that can only come from Him, so that He can be the light in our darkness, so that we in turn can be the light in each other's darkness. That's what the Christian community is really about. As we pray this day, we ask our God for the grace that we need to remember that He is always there. All He asks us to do is to allow Him to shine through us, so that through us, others can hear His voice.